Mayor, just a reminder, we'll be live in probably 15 seconds.
Buzzy is here.
All right, are we all set?
Buzzy's not in here.
Oh, how'd we lose Buzzy? We'll give him a minute.
Yeah. I thought it was funny.
I did. All right, we'll start. Welcome to the April 13th, 2022 North Logan City Council meeting. It looks like we have a full city council. Am I echoing?
Yes.
TV.
So no one to excuse at this point. We will begin our opening ceremony with the pledge by Craig and the prayer by Roger.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Father in heaven, we're grateful for this evening that we can meet together as city council and members of the city staff and citizens. Grateful for the moisture we received and blessing will be this summer. Grateful for the community we live in. This time as we have a full agenda and items to discuss and make decisions on, that we may make good decisions with good input from research and code, and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right, I would entertain a motion to adopt today's agenda with one change. Item number, I believe it is on number 6. Is that right, Ellen? Item number 6 has been removed from the agenda.
Correct. Item on number 6. So I'm just trying to figure out ways to get rid of the echo right now. And I don't know why it's doing that.
It sounded like the TV was turned up or something.
Yeah, can you mute
Do you have a
the?
remote on the TV?
Testing. Yeah, that's. Okay, we'll just proceed in the interest of getting through tonight. Did it get fixed?
I can't hear it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Good job. Nick,
Glad
you're
I thought of
officially
that.
appointed to address this situation. Okay, all right, I would entertain a motion to approve today's agenda with the, we'll cancel item number 6, the standalone agreement with Olo Builders.
So moved.
Moved by Buzzy.
Second.
Second by Craig. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. I don't believe we have any minutes from previous meetings to approve. Is that right?
No, and I have to apologize for Marie. She is very sick at this time, has been for several days now, but she was getting caught up on a lot of those minutes. And so for the next meeting, you will have a number of minutes to approve. And hopefully she feels better in the next couple of days.
Okay, thanks, Ellen. All right, follow up on issues from previous meetings. Ellen, take it away.
I don't have any follow-up items, but I can go through the action items pretty quickly. If that's okay.
Yeah, sounds great.
Just jumping down through here, we'll talk about the Civic Center. I'll jump through things that we're already going to discuss on the agenda tonight. So I'll skip through a few items to avoid redundancy. Recruitment compensation, the interns that we've had and that we've been working with the department heads on have done a fantastic job. We're nearly fully staffed in parks right now, which is absolutely incredible. From 1 month ago, being 7 or 8 short on part-time. So hats off to all the different departments and the HR department working on that. And then jumping down through the communication committee, hats off to them as well for beefing up and communicating more with the public. It's something we always strive to do and do better. Jumping down through here though, water we'll talk about tonight, sewer we'll talk about a little bit more, the key elements on those and why we're doing certain things right now in the city. Streets, they're transitioning from snow plowing to crack sealing and going throughout the city. They are about half staffed right now, so hopefully we can continue finding those employees for that department as well. Stormwater, we have a new employee who'll be taking over for Will shortly. We're sad to see Will go on to greener pastures. He's going to be heading towards law school and wants to be a judge. So we can't blame him, but Ryan will be taking over that department, who's in our streets department right now, and he'll do a fantastic job. Jumping down through here though, engineering, we'll discuss water rights tonight and also a little bit of the USDA loan. They are looking at the 1200 East overlay. They provided some overlays for several of the property owners that we're in contact with regarding their properties and how it may affect with the proposed alignment as he's going through the design iterations, and also canal piping, but that would be associated with the Civic Center, which we'll talk about later tonight. Jumping down through parks, they're extremely busy right now doing several things at the Cache Recreation Complex, which is formerly known as Meadowview Park, going through the pickleball. They're prepping for several of the items and the features that will go around the pickleball courts because they'll pour the concrete basically at one time and then look at doing the restrooms and the pavilion that will surround those as well. And they're gearing up to do, they have to warm up the irrigation system, which is a massive undertaking each year to water all of that area down there. And they're also looking at things at Elkridge as well. The playground's finally in after all the parts shipped in 9 months later. So it's fantastic news. And if you go down to Elkridge, just jumping ahead, Recreation did a fantastic job with the Easter egg hunt. And after that, you probably had 50 to 100 kids stay for an hour or two on the playground afterwards. So a great job to both of those departments. Trails, we are looking at the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. We've met on that, and we have had good discussions with Hyde Park and Smithfield City regarding that. Lengthy discussions with Hyde Park in the past few weeks regarding Bonneville Shoreline Trail alignment, how we can work together on that, which would be a fantastic undertaking if we can get that together. And canal trails, we probably need to meet with Carly again to talk about some segments that we can work on, kind of the low-hanging fruit or the easy segments to formalize and install. Right now, Recreation is extremely busy. So they're starting soccer, track, and tumbling this week. They have baseball getting started in the next few weeks. And the HSC programming, that's basically the former RSL facility. They're starting several programs down there as well in the next few weeks. So they've got everything gearing up. And then the color run, which is this Saturday, which is a fundraising effort on behalf of the friends that are putting money together for the Civic Center. Jumping down through here, facilities, Dathan's taken over and he's doing a fantastic job with several things throughout the city. And we'll talk about his budget later on, so I'll skip through that. Memorial Day, we're prepping for that, and also looking at the secondary watering options. They've been working on that for the past several weeks. The Community Development Department has several things coming up. They'll have a workshop in May that they put together, a joint workshop between City Council and Planning Commission. In the meeting this week, they will have discussions regarding Smiling H and also, I think it's the log cabin development, which is next to the Smiling H subdivision. So there'll be 2 large subdivision discussions tomorrow night right here in this area. Jumping down through economic development, we'll talk about that tonight at length. And treasurer, they are looking at cleaning up some of the dispatch fund. There's different ways in which Logan and the dispatch center is calculating the fee. So we need to make sure that their inventory of how they're billing is the exact same as North Logan's. And so hats off to Debbie and to Mary for catching that and going through that and looking at ways where we can make sure that those are identical in the way we're going through that. They did that with garbage several years ago, so they should be ahead of the curve right now and going through that. That'll help out the city significantly, though. Thanks to Vicky going through this. She's doing several things with businesses and making the process easier and keeping up to date on that. And we'll talk a little bit more about human resources. Karen's done several things the past few weeks and working with the interns. Right now is kind of the fun operation of going through the workers' comp and the other items, and then preparing for insurance renewal for employees coming up. Recorder, we're looking at Flores, but his main job right now is really helping with the budget. So everything you see tonight with the budget, Scott had a hand in. So thanks to Scott for going through that. Library, they have several programs coming up, fundraising opportunities, gearing up and designs and everything else for the community center. So they've been very busy. Police are working with us on the nuisance property. They'll have their budget presentation tonight, so we won't go over this at length. And then fire department, they're recruiting. They're the same as several other departments. It's so difficult to find individuals right now, but hats off to them because they're working with 2 individuals to fill the vacancies that they have in that department, and also their main station building projects. I went through those pretty quick, but we'll discuss several things tonight. It's a lengthy agenda, so I don't want to go over everything.
All right, thanks, Alan. That moves us nicely into the recognition of an exemplary staff member. We're recognizing Karen Jukes, who I see as a ray of sunshine. Way to wear yellow today. That's very appropriate in North Logan City. This is from Scott Bennett, City Recorder. Karen Jukes is a detail-oriented and conscientious regarding her duties in payroll and HR for both North Logan City and the North Park Police Agency. She works hard at taking care of each employee's needs and questions as they come up. She is instrumental in yearly planning, organizing, and renewals of health insurance, workers' comp insurance, and liability insurance. She serves all city staff and is constantly looking for additional ways the city can show appreciation to its staff, i.e. during March, she was instrumental in planning and organizing Employee Appreciation Month and reaching out to each employee with activities, emails, and treats. Karen is an instrumental part of making us all feel valued, and she goes above and beyond. So give Karen a hand of applause. All right. We will move on to our first item of business. A public hearing to receive input on a proposed adjustment to master fee schedule as it relates to the tiered water monthly user rate fee structure. After the public hearing, the city council may consider a resolution modifying the master fee schedule. Jordan, are you prepped to speak to this?
Hello, thank you for taking the time to go over water. Water is always a great thing to talk about. As you guys know, we're in yet another year of a bleak outlook for water. If you want to go to this next slide. One of the things that we need to look at, though, before we start to look at our water rates, one thing to remember is that water rate increases are directed towards water that is used on the culinary drinking water that is used on exterior landscapes above average. So anyone who has secondary water or anyone who uses water responsibly compared to the averages will not see increases. The typical water use is another thing to kind of echo. During the winter months and during months where we do not water exterior landscaping, the average user uses 5,000 gallons. Sorry, the average household uses 5,000 gallons of water. That number, no rates are changed in that category as well. And yeah, so if you want to go to the next one. So this all started back in like 2014. We started to look at tiered water rates. The state of Utah passed a thing to make tiered water rates mandatory throughout all cities. You guys probably Roger was on the council when we first started talking about it. But basically, it just makes it so that people can work towards different tiers to save water. And as you use water, the more you use, the more you pay for it. Our goal with this is to bring down water consumption. We as a city and as a staff would rather see water consumption come down than bills go up, because saved water goes a lot further in the long run than the dollar would. So our goal with all these is to save water. So when these were first implemented in 2018, if you want to go to the next slide, these were our peak demand flows. So how peak demand day works is on our system, on the culinary drinking water system in North Logan City, we follow what's called a peak demand day. So on that peak demand is the amount of water, culinary drinking water, used in one day throughout all of the connections. So throughout the whole city. So what we use that for is we kind of gauge how much water we can produce. Now this is one day. So if you think about it, the whole month of July is a peak month. We may drop down 100,000 gallons a day, but so that's what we follow, is just a peak demand day, so that we size our system and everything that we can distribute to meet that need. And if you look at it in 2017, we had a big jump from 17 to 18. That's when our rates were low and we didn't have a tiered structure in place. In 2018, we implemented the tiered structure. And as you can see, we started to tail off. We started to come back down. We started to average out around the 2017 numbers, which is awesome. So that rate change was directed at single family homes and multifamily homes. And they've done a fantastic job at saving water. If you want to go to the next one. So if you look at this tier structure, this is the same tier structure we've had in place since 2018. When we first started this, if you look over to the far right on tier 9, we used to have, that was above 10 connections in that number. And tier 8, we were above a dozen. Tier 7, we were above 20. And it kind of carried on through that trend. And if you look at it today, we have 0 in tier 9. This is just the month of July. So you got to think we're looking at peak demand. So the summer months, June, July, August, are big water production months. The rest of the year, bills are low, water production is low. So those 3 tiers, those top tiers have come down. We've been able to get, well, residents through caring about their landscape and caring about the water situation and knowing about the drought conditions are starting to go down, which is fantastic. And so what I've done is I've highlighted kind of in that red to show that 73% of North Logan residents won't feel any change in this water rate change, well, in the water rate change. Additionally, the 20% users in tier 3 and 4, the additional 20 will only see up to about $1, $1.50. If you want to go to that next slide, we can focus on that. So yeah, this is a comparison that we put together. One of the things that we found with water is it's really hard for people to look at how much they use. Like a lot of people don't know. Looking at our water bill, it's kind of hard to decipher exactly how much water you use. And so we're trying to correct that so that people can see exactly how many gallons of water they use. Currently on our bill, it's per unit. So it will say like, I use 34 units, but at 34 units, that's 34,000 gallons of water. So we're trying to help people, well, read their bill better. And so if you look at that tier 3, they'll see if they use the average rate on a half-acre lot, they'll see a $1.54 increase in just those 3 months.
Right. So that's just over the summer.
Yep,
It would
just the
ultimately
June, July,
be.
August. If they stay in that tier, if they come back down, it'll be closer to that 72-cent increase. So if you want to go to the next one. So, and then continuing, one of the things that we've noticed is the institutional rate that we've had in place, we feel is a little lenient. So we have over 76 connections of institutional water usage. One of the things that we've found is that if you look at these numbers in tier 9, 8, 7, 6, we have a lot of users up there. We have a lot in tier 9 that are using over 1 million gallons of water in 1 month. And so we have some that are in the 2 million and one in the 3 million range in 1 month. They'll use more water in a day than most of you will use in your household will use an entire year. And so what we've tried to do with this rate change is focus on how we can help those guys come back down in the tiers. The residents have done a fantastic job of bringing everything back down and being conservative. Institutional connections have not done that. And so our focus is to try to help them. We're going to meet with them individually and come up with ways to help them bring their water rates down. Again, we're focusing on the 3 months of the year. So if we look at all of our data on how much water they use, it's those 3 months where they're in this range. The rest of the year, they're not close. So that shows us they're using that water exteriorly. If you want to go to the next one. Another rate that we're looking at is commercial. Commercial, we've been very lenient, not very lenient, but we have been a little lenient in the years past. And what we've seen is we've got 3 connections that we need to worry about this year. 3 is not, it doesn't sound like a lot of connections, but they do use a lot of water. So we're going to meet with each of them individually to help them bring that down. And again, we're looking at those 3 months of summer use. Just keep driving that home. It's only those 3 months that we're worried about. The rest of the year, everybody's doing fantastic. If you want to go to the next one. So this is a multi-unit townhome rate. So this is the same rate we've had in place for a long time. We have a lot of connections. So this is like townhomes, PUDs, big connections. One of the big ones is over here, Aspen Meadows. And if you look back at this, when we first put it in, we were over the 4 million. We were in the tier 9s with multiple connections. And we've started to see a lot of those connections start to come down. Again, to applaud Aspen Meadows, and they've come down significantly. Have done a fantastic job. And so if they stay around that rate they're at now, they won't see a big increase. If you want to go to the next one, what we did this year is we split out apartment complexes. It felt like those single family PUDs were doing a good job. They'd done a great job. They've taken responsibility for the landscapes. Apartment complexes, we broke that out into a new tier or a new pricing structure because they weren't hitting the peaks of where a multi-unit PUD was. So they were kind of reaping the benefits of staying down in that low range when in actuality, they were using over 1 million gallons of water in a month. And this is on exterior, on landscaping. So we added a new structure for that. We've got 4 connections in that category that we're trying to go at, or that we're going to try to help conserve water, explore secondary connections and stuff like that. So if you want to go to the next one. So this is just an update. You guys will see this in the newsletter if you haven't already. This is the current water restrictions going into the summer of 2022. We won't go into detail, but we are starting at 3 days a week. Like we said before, our water situation is we're in a drought again. 2021 was a big drought. 2022 looks to be the same. You want to go to the next one. Future planning, as you guys are all aware, we are working on a new well source. It's out to bid currently. We are looking at adding new tanks on the bench to facilitate our needs currently. And then impact fees from any future development will go into building additional tanks and systems. If you want to go to the next one, I think that might be, this is the last one. So I'll go fast. But really our big push this year is we're going to push on education again, try to help. The state's come up with a great resource in Slow the Flow. I don't know if you guys have taken a chance to look at it, but they offer some fantastic stuff. USU, through that, you can have USU come and do a water audit of your property. They'll help you for free identify areas where you're using too much water. They offer smart controller rebates of 75%, which is fantastic. You can go down to Lowe's and get a free smart controller that will monitor the weather for you and adjust on that. We offer catch cups at the North Logan City offices to help people with instruction if they want to do their own water audit. Another thing that we're going to start doing this summer is offering, incentives to those that do make changes to their landscaping to try to help people. Well, just congratulate people on doing such a good job. So that's kind of the water rate discussion. I don't know if you guys have any other questions.
Yeah,
or
thank you, Jordan.
information.
I know
Sorry,
that
it's a
this
lot
has
of information
been
really quick, but
reflective of a lot of work that you and your department have done. Are there any questions from the council?
I just have one. Maybe surprising to see that 4 apartment complexes are over that million tier,
Mhm.
and we're confident that's from landscaping.
Uh-huh.
So when they get in the winter, they're well below.
they're under 500,000 gallons of water.
I'm just trying to think of our apartments and where all that water would be going to landscaping. It doesn't seem like there would be how much significance there. Okay.
There's quite a bit.
Well, it brings up a good point too. And one of the things that our staff has worked with them on is just encouraging them. A lot of them do have the ability to switch to secondary. And if they can do that and go through that process and get the shares and work with the secondary water companies, it can alleviate that significantly. And that's one of the
Yeah.
goals.
One concern that comes to mind on that is I'm not sure if the city bills the owners of the apartment complexes individually, then they pass those expenses on to the tenants, making sure
Yeah.
that that's not something that goes the wrong direction because we raise
Right.
rates rather than have them take the responsibility to resolve their landscaping issues. So
Yeah, and that's a big problem. So we're trying to meet with each one of those individually. There's only 4.
Yeah.
There's not like we're dealing with 100.
right.
So we're trying to talk to them individually. And if they pass that on, I mean, that's kind of up to them, but we'll try to educate them. We'll put flyers on, the mailboxes down there, but it has to change.
Sure.
I mean, we're seeing them use 400,000 in the winter. They're using 100 or 1.5 million in the summer. So they're
And we're
wasting
talking about
money
like
on the water.
park strips.
Yeah, that's
It's-
crazy.
It's not like they have a huge
That's what I'm
lawn
trying to
that they're.
fathom.
So
right.
that's just, and like I said, that's why we broke them out, because when they were in that multi-unit complex rate, they were kind of in the middle of it. And so they didn't really see any increase because, like I said, it's the top end where we try to get them to work their way back down. And so they were kind of sitting in the middle and weren't seeing increases. But with the new rate that kind of shines a light on them, I think it will help educate them to know what they're using.
Okay,
Thanks,
any other
Jordan.
questions? All right, then I think we will open this up. Thank you, Jordan.
I think you-
But stick around to a public hearing. I don't have my typical thing that I read, so I'll just kind of give you a general overview of our rules for public hearing. I will designate a maximum time period of 2 minutes for each person who would like to speak. Please be courteous and end your comments when asked to do so. You may also provide written comments. Please identify yourself when you do get up to speak. Direct questions, you won't be asking questions of the council. It's just generally there's not an interaction, but just making a statement. Avoid confrontation and arguments. The council wants to hear your opinion, but it is not a debate. So with that, I will open up the public hearing. And
Please go to the.
do you mind just coming to the mic? Then we can get your comments recorded. Thank you.
My name's Wallace Odd. I live at 3135 North, 1800 East. I applaud a lot of these efforts and working with people to do and save water. That's great. But, and maybe we didn't open it for other comments, but I attended some meetings about 2018 and we were talking about reservoirs that people need to put in before new housing came. If we're talking about conserving water, it's great to have the residents conserve. I bought my house with a lot more lawn than I need, I'll guarantee you. But it needs to be watered, and I've got a garden that needs to be watered. So I'm very interested in how this community is going to do other things to build reservoirs and the kind of things we were promised in that meeting. And then I hear, well, those people left. I'm sorry, a promise as far as I'm concerned extends. When I hear about townhouses, I own some townhouses down here, and I had some water problems in those townhouses. And I had a little bit of trouble getting some help to get that fixed, but we finally did. And I found out in that problem that 17 units are on one water meter. Now, they're always going to be in the high tier of being paid. Now, as a property owner, I tried to draw that to their attention. They said, well, we've tried to bring it to the attention of some folks. We can't get that done. Now, I don't understand how those permits are given. To have 17 units on one water meter is going to ensure that that HOA is always going to pay the top price for water. That doesn't make sense to me. So there's a lot I need to learn again about the water situations here. I want to do that, but I'd like to hear some discussions on, instead of just relying on the citizens to cut back, where are we going to put in some reservoirs and do some other things?
Thank you,
all.
Mr. Odd.
Thank you all for your service too, by the way. Done some of that. I applaud you all.
Thank you. And I can speak a little bit to that. We're currently in the process of securing land for 2 additional water reservoirs and 1 additional well. So, that just takes time with funding, getting funding secured. But that is in the works right now. Anyone else?
Good evening, Dave Flandro. I have just a quick question, and that is if any of this water that we're talking about is being purchased by North Logan from Logan City, and are these rates going to continue to go up as they drive those rates up, and therefore we have no control? And so from a rate standpoint, I'm not bothered with what we're trying to accomplish here, but we may be the tail of the dog. And unfortunately, my concern is if we start just buying in on these increases and these rate structures that could negatively affect the residents, because we'll lose our negotiating power, I guess, as a community, since we're buying all of our water from Logan City. I don't know if that made sense. But the intention is I'd like to be able to keep things as local as possible rather than being dictated by an outside municipality. So any comment on that?
I'll let Jordan address this. This doesn't have anything to do with Logan City, though.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Just to clarify, that's a
Wait
good
till
point, though.
wastewater.
It's a great thing. We do not buy any water from anyone. So it's only our sources. Yep.
So this is entirely from us,
Yeah.
North Logan City,
It's just us.
taking this initiative.
Sure, based on the discussion.
Sorry.
It's a good point. There are other areas that were at risk for that sort of scenario.
Clarification is always necessary, though.
I have questions for you when we're done, so you have to go back up.
Okay. Anyone else?
What is the city doing right now?
Joni, I'll close the public hearing and then we'll move it to the city council discussion. So I will close the public hearing and then we will discuss amongst the council. Go ahead, Jordan. I do have a gavel, not afraid to use it. Joni, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I'm still trying to learn our protocol here. So what is the city doing? There's days I'll drive by and I might see a big water gush popping out at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, or park
Yeah.
strips. I mean, I know park strips would be an easy thing to remedy, that we wouldn't have to use water on
Yeah.
grass that really we're not using.
No, that's good. That's a great question. So North Logan City, so our park system is fed almost 98% by secondary water sources. So we do not use culinary drinking water on the parks. So the Cache Recreation Complex, Elk Ridge Park, the library, the police department. The only place we do use some is up at the cemetery. And that's what Alan mentioned. We're looking at changing that to secondary options. So with that, we do have to follow the canal company's regulations on currently our flow, what we can use, but we are looking at more options on how to reduce and cut back on those. We've installed weather sensing irrigation systems. So the clocks will tell us, what the ET rates are and how much water we need to apply. We're implementing some soil sensors to see how much water is in the ground. We're also going to start cutting back. You'll probably see it a lot this year on not irrigating used surfaces. So non-used surfaces. So like areas down around the CRC, if it's not an area that's used for an athletic field or used heavily by the public, it'll start to probably brown off or die, because we want to conserve that water on areas of high use. So.
Question sorry, Jenny.
Thank you.
Mr. Ott, and also we have Mitch here tonight from Aspen Meadows. Good questions, and I've wondered this for a while, but when we look at PUDs or apartments or townhomes, do we not multiply that by number of units for the actual usage?
If you want to scroll back to one of those,
Yes.
I can show you how the tier rate. So their tier structures are completely different. So this is a good one. This is multi-unit. So how a base rate, you might be bringing up the base rate, how it's multiplied. So a base rate is $7. Sorry, an average base rate on a single family home. Well, the base rate is $12.15. But on a multi-unit complex, it's charged $7.11 per door. So that's what you're talking about, the base rate. That's stayed the same. We haven't changed any of that. But one of the things you brought up is the tier structure on how they're formed. So yes, they share 1 meter, but what we've done is we've had to look at how much they average through the winter months versus how much they average through the peak summer months versus like June and September, to try to find tier structures, to try to find points, you know, of 500,000 gallons where they can move down so that they're not always pegged at the very top rate. So as you can see on this one, this is a multi-unit and townhome complex. We've only got 2 that are up in that very, well, they're not even the top, they're in tier 7. And that's only for 3 months of the year.
So I'm hearing you right, that we've calculated for those specific circumstances.
Yeah. if
And
you
their
go-
rate, that percent, that number of gallons has shifted away from a
Yep.
single family home to be equal more of a,
Yeah, so for
large.
example, Ask Meadows, they hit tier 7 once last year at 3,100,000 gallons. So that's how much they use, but it's 86 homes. So you have to take that into consideration. So when we looked at that, we broke that out into how much they averaged per lot, then took that and looked at the rest of the city on that average lot size. They're
That's what I
paying the
meant.
same amount. And so then if you look at all the other ones, when you go down, so we've got some smaller townhome complexes that only have a couple connections. And looks like I didn't get them all in there, but they're down towards the bottom end where they're going to be paying the same as an average resident who doesn't use exterior water. So there's a lot of math going into that, but that's kind of how we got to all those tier structures. And they're
Thanks,
all
Jordan.
different across each category. So
thank you.
you bet.
You'll just have to come to the mic just so that, sorry. Maybe we can invest in a traveling mic. It's just so that you can, it's just so they can hear you on the
Is it
YouTube.
practice and procedures to put that many units on one water meter usually?
Yes.
Because that doesn't seem, I mean, I've had units back east and I haven't seen that, but that's common practice.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I do that.
Okay, I need to understand it. I'll talk to you about it because it doesn't make sense to me. Okay.
Yeah,
I
if
give
you
the
can
2
just
second-
address it,
yeah.
that'd be great.
So the reason we do that is if we meter every individual lot, so if, let's say there's a complex over here of, or a townhome complex of 42 units, instead of having one water meter that the city's responsible for, we'd have 42 water meters and all of the pipe that goes from the main line to those water meters that the city would then be responsible for. So the long-term cost on the city is significant, where if we do 1 meter, it saves the city a ton of money in the future. So the taxpayers don't have to pay to go back and replace all of those meters. So that's why we do it. And it actually works out pretty well on a lot of those complexes where they do pretty well. They average about the same as they would if they were individually metered.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Just want to reiterate, thank you for all the good work you've done in putting that presentation.
Second.
And
It was mostly Zach.
well, I wish he was here so we could tell him thank you in person. I'm excited to be able to put out this information, what the water restrictions will be. So thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So I think we'll just jump into the next item. We're not acting today, or are we?
Yes, you'd have to pass. Sorry.
Resolution. yeah.
Let me go.
Oh,
Consider
okay.
a resolution modifying the master.
You'd have
fee
to pass a
schedule.
resolution based off of those rates that he just had up there.
Okay, I would then entertain a motion to pass this resolution.
I make the motion to approve resolution 2207.
Okay, motion by Craig,
Seconded.
second by Emily, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Okay, we will move on. Don't go anywhere far, Jordan. We will move on to item 3, public hearing to receive input on proposed adjustment to master fee schedule as it relates to water rights fee structure. After the public hearing, the city council may consider a resolution modifying the master fee schedule.
So this one is a lot easier than the last one. So basically how this works is when a new home or a new development comes in, or a home on a lot that hasn't been part of a new development, there's a cost to the city to buy water shares to provide indoor culinary drinking water to that house. And so for the city to buy those shares, this was put in a few months ago, 6 months ago,
6 months ago.
6 months ago. And it was put in at $2,000 per acre foot. Through some research and through looking at costs of that, we feel that was too high. And we want to cut that down to the $1,000 mark. And so there's a bunch of equations and work on here, but it would basically cut in half what we were charging before. But we feel that that's sufficient to cover the future needs of the city on purchasing water rights for our wells.
Okay. Any questions before we open the public hearing?
No.
All right, then I will open a public hearing on this with the same rules, 2 minutes. No interaction with the council, but you may ask questions. All right, seeing no comments, I will close the public hearing and council, do you have any discussion on this?
I move that we pass the resolution modifying the master fee schedule for, not sure what we're calling this, Jordan, for new resolution 2208. Thank you.
All right, motion by Buzzy,
Decrease.
Seconded.
second by Emily, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. We'll move on to item 4, public hearing to receive input on a proposed adjustment to master fee schedule as it relates to the sewer monthly user rate fee structure. After the public hearing, the city council may consider a resolution modifying the master fee schedule. Take it away.
Well, it's me again. This one's also pretty cut and dry. So we have a lot of sewer improvements that are going on through our master or our main trunk line that distributes sewage to Logan City. There's a lot of need and construction going on right now. And so we do have to go out, as you guys are all aware, and do some bonding in order to put those infrastructure items in. As we go out for bonding, they use an equation, the state uses an equation to come up with how much our sewer bill should be. So it comes out to what an average should be for a resident. And so to meet that average, we've added 45 cents to the 1,000-gallon usage. So how your sewer rate's calculated real quick is just, it's based upon your, well, you can read it right there, for each 1,000 gallons of winter usage of water and the average gallons of water passing by the meter for 6 months. So through November to April, your average water rate, which is around that 5,000, 3,000, 2,000 gallon range, is how your sewer fee is calculated. So you take every 1,000 gallons that passes through your meter, and we charge $4 for each 1,000 gallons, and then your charge base rate of $39.78. So we had to bring the average rate up to a certain point in order to qualify for these loans. So that 45-cent increase per 1,000 gallons would bring us to that point.
Okay, just to kind of reiterate this, we have to do some structural updates on our sewer lines, and in order to get funding that we can afford through federal sources, we're bound by a rate that's tied to our average income. So this is just something that we've got to do to secure that funding. Any discussion amongst the council before we open the public hearing?
Do you mind sharing what the average increase would be for various home sizes?
Pull that up.
I just want that to be
Yeah.
on record.
45 cents for 1,000 gallons.
So if you scroll up and you guys zoom out or go to the right a little bit, it's over there. So right here, this bottom right corner, if you want to zoom in on this one, up, yeah, just slide over a little, right there. So like the mayor said, it's just because of our mass, our median.
Magi, your median adjusted gross
Adjusted
income.
Adjusted gross
That was the word I was
income,
looking for.
right?
So it's, yeah, like I said, it's based upon our median adjusted gross income, Magi. And so this is what the average rate, we have to hit 60-55 in order to be at that average. So we hit 60-69 as an average. We have to just hit that average. And so that would be the average rate. Now, granted, there's a ton that are way below that and a ton that are way over that, but that just has to be the average amount hit.
Okay.
So
But realistically, look at your neighbors, anyone who's bringing that average too high, that Magi number, that's who you need to talk to. You're making too much.
Very true.
I know where you live, Lindsay.
I'm clearing 9,000, Buzzy.
Yeah,
I'll go on
yeah.
record.
3 times the amount Buzzy's making.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from the council?
No, looks great.
Okay, we will open that up for public hearing with the same rules as previously stated. All right, seeing no comments, we will close the public hearing. Any discussion or motions?
Fine. I move that we pass the, oh boy, I should have taken this one, that we adopt the resolution for the master fee schedule for 2209.
All right, motion by Buzzy,
Seconded.
seconded by Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thanks
Nice
again,
job,
Jordan. All right, we will move on to consideration of a development plan for a subdivision of approximately 12 acres located at approximately 18th East, 2800 North. The proposed subdivision now includes 10 lots in the RE1 zone and is being proposed to be subdivided using the density determinant method.
Yes, I'll give Jordan a break and introduce this one. Unless you want to, Jordan, you can come right back up. As you take off. Smart. So this subdivision has already come before the city council in concept plan, and then was revised also. So it's been in front of the council a couple different times. This is development plan where we're looking more in depth at some of the specifics of the subdivision, including road layout and whatnot. Alan has circled that on the screen. I think you can see his cursor there. We can flip into that development plan if
Which
you'd
one?
like.
That's the name of it.
Yeah.
Great. So the applicant did submit all the plans, and we actually met with Nick a few different times in the city offices and with our engineer, talking over some details. They went back to the drawing board and changed up some stormwater that they had originally planned as an injection well, changed that to a basin. And they worked with us on several things with that regard. Secondary water was a question, and I wasn't at the planning commission meeting. Alan can fill in. I was gone to a conference if I misrepresent this, or Emily. But one of the main concerns from the planning commission was just secondary irrigation water and shares. So the applicant was able to get a signed agreement that the property can be serviced, and then also had a signed agreement as to the lease. So some of the shares for the property will be leased as a long-term lease while they look for those shares to buy when they come up on the market. And that was signed to by the canal board head that those are going into a long-term lease in the interim to kind of satisfy that condition. And I believe that was the only condition given by the planning commission for this development. Again, Alan or Emily, feel free to step in if I'm misrepresenting there.
You're correct. That was the only condition. They approved it conditioned upon getting those signed agreements, and those are in the folder.
Okay.
Yep. One of the other things that they looked at was the sewer alignment with future subdivisions coming in. We had a concept go through at the same time, and they've been great to work with that subdivision, the Yonkers as well, and getting that alignment of the sewer line to a place that will be easy to maintain and through a future road for both subdivisions.
Okay. All right, questions from the council? All right, Nick, did you want to speak to this at all? I don't think you necessarily need to. Okay. I would entertain a motion on this.
Motion to improve a developmental plan for horse pasture.
It's Orchard View now.
Now it's
Oh,
Orchard
excuse me.
View.
Ooh,
I like
boy.
A
that.
couple iterations.
I do like Orchard View. Sorry, I called it the wrong thing. Orchard View subdivision.
All right, motion by Emily,
Second.
second by Buzzy, all in favor?
I
Any
I am
opposed?
grateful to see the name change because horse pasture is not as nice.
All right, any opposed on that? All right, that motion carries and Emily approves of the name.
Yeah, that is very important to know.
All right, we will move on to item number 7. Consider a proposal to hire a firm to handle a portion of economic development for North Logan City. Alan, can you give us a background?
Yeah, I can just give you a quick overview of this. Months ago in city council, when we had our budgetary revision, we talked about the importance of economic development in North Logan City and pushing that a little bit further. And a key element of that was hiring a full-time economic development specialist. So that time funds were allocated in order to hire that full-time economic development specialist. As we've been working through that, another opportunity was considered. And as the mayor and I consulted through this, we looked at hiring perhaps a firm or a consulting firm and an individual to help with economic development. And so to keep the council in the loop, keep everyone in the loop on this, we kind of went away from that proposal, and we wanted to be open about that. And so the proposal now is to look at hiring. It's called Business Dynamics. And Lloyd Berenson, former mayor, is involved in that as well in helping us. And so the proposal would be to hire that firm. This is two things. One, we get someone that could come in and immediately have a knowledge of the area and start working to bring in economic development throughout the city and also help businesses grow. This also saves a considerable amount of money. To hire a full-time economic development specialist at an entry level full-time for an economic development specialist is around 100 to 110,000. And this one would scale it back to more around the $58,000 range, which would be
With no
fantastic-
benefits.
No benefits.
That's part of the cost savings.
Kind of same amount of work though. So this would be a fantastic opportunity for the city, but we want to bring it for you. The agreement is in the folder. If you go through this, it just outlines the terms of the agreement. It's very brief though, just says he'll work very hard and
Can you
But
put
it-
like a measure that they have to bring a big box store like Target, and if they're not, they're fired?
I'm
Could
assuming
we
that's
do
supposed to
that
be
one?
2023. The termination of.
We
the
want
agreement.
results on the bottom, like what business
Yeah.
is gonna do.
I thought we changed that.
I just changed it, but it says it shall end on April
Oh.
17th. It used to say 2022.
I think it's supposed to say commence on April
Well, it says
17th,
it shall
2022.
begin on the date hereof, which would be the date of the agreement, and then shall end on, and that
Yeah.
probably should at least be a year from now.
Isn't that a year from now?
There's not supposed to
I
be
changed
Oh,
it.
you changed it.
down here before below it gives a longer agreement. I'm not sure why that made it in there. It's supposed to say it starts on April 17th, 2022 and continues indefinitely. The city can give a 30-day notice at any time if they want to terminate the contract.
Okay, then we can just change it.
Or change it on the fly.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, that works. Yeah, and I mean, just background, we've
So
talked
we
about
need to,
this.
number 4, then we should also change the municipality shall make its first monthly payment on or before May 18th and its final payment be made on or before April 18th.
Yeah,
We
I would
should
just
maybe
strike
also
that.
eliminate that
Mhm.
as well.
That's it. Basically, we're entering into an annual contract, right? So renewable on the 21 year from now. Is that the plan?
It would just continue
just be
forward until
continuous.
we just we terminate the contract.
yeah, and maybe we should just make sure that's specified that it will be a year-to-year contract unless 30 days notice is given. Just add that into the contract.
Is the consulting fee, Mayor, a lump sum payment or is it a monthly payment?
It's monthly,
monthly.
is how it's outlined
Did I miss
here.
that?
And is it something that's also going to be open to other applicants, or is this just one?
This is just a one-time, it's a sole source contract.
And we have measurements in place to say that we would like guarantee that there's something happening within that year?
I think it's more built into the fact that we shrunk it down to just say 30 days. If he's not doing well, we just terminate
Okay.
the contract.
Yeah, and I think specifically with Lloyd that he's been doing this kind of gratis before now and has done a really great job already.
Mhm.
He's just kind of been helping out just because he cares. And so I think there is a lot of motivation where he is a former mayor. I think he has a lot of skin in the game on this.
I agree. I just want to make sure that we're really transparent.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, are we acting on this tonight?
You could just to authorize the mayor in signing this contract.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to authorize me to sign this contract with those modifications.
I'll make the motion that we approve the mayor signing the consultation agreement as discussed.
All right, motion by Craig,
Seconded.
second by Emily, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. We are on schedule. Let it be noted. That is no small feat. Yubi, we're counting on you.
Oh, no.
All right, we will move on to our work session,
5 minutes.
beginning with the fiscal year 2023 budget proposal from the library department. James, if you'd come talk to us.
We are on like to the minute.
Well, Mayor Peterson and members of the city council, I'm excited. Well, I don't know if excited is the word. I'm glad to be able to talk with you today. So I think what I'll do in presenting the budget is go through our sources of income and try to quickly go through these things and give you try to give everyone an understanding of where our money is coming from. And then, of course, we'll talk about our spending. And we have two main sources of income for the library. And the first is the dedicated property tax, which is just that first line there. And then also, well, a few things have been happening in Cache Valley that have really affected our library dramatically. One of those is that the Logan Public Library, they're going through dramatic changes there. There's a big hole in the ground, and they're actually going to be having their groundbreaking ceremony for their new library this Friday. But because it's such a long process, a lot of their patrons are looking at have been using other libraries in order to meet their needs. And so we've seen a dramatic increase in the amount of people that have been visiting our library. And it's not just from the people in Logan. We've been seeing a lot more people because we're having a lot more programs, and the quality of our programs is just fantastic. And we just have a great library. We really do. Great collections, a great staff. There's a vibrancy to our library. And so we're expecting that this non-resident fee, this fiscal year that we're currently in, we're already dramatically higher than we were in previous years. And so I have budgeted 10,000, but I would expect that it would be higher than that for this next fiscal year. And then the Thorn Endowment is our other large source of income. And with building the new Civic Center and remodeling the library, which hopefully will be happening soon, the way that money is being distributed is changing a little bit this year. In the past, well, so there are those two accounts that say Thorn Endowment and Thorn Endowment specific use. In past years, we've had 140,000 and then 30,000 in those two accounts. With this year, we're expecting that we're going to be setting aside, or the Thorn Endowment people will be setting aside 20,000. And so that means that we will have 10,000 coming in, or really 20,000 less on that Thorn Endowment specific use line. So that kind of explains that. Now this gets a little bit more complicated because in years past, in this last fiscal year, we had been setting aside 20,000 for the new Civic Center and the library remodel. And that money had been transferred, well, that's much further down, but we were setting aside that money in a different account. And that will come into play in just a little bit. So now let's go down and look at how we're going to be spending our money. So a few lines, if I go through every one of these lines, we'll be here all night. But there's a few things that I specifically want to call your attention to. And one of those is the line that says library software maintenance. Yeah, the mouse is on it just right there. Library software maintenance. Software for libraries is very expensive. And all libraries have to use what we call an integrated library system, but really that's our library catalog. And so the catalog is for everything. Well, it contains all the books that are in our collection. And it's the user interface for our patrons. It's the way that our patrons engage with just about everything in the library. It's how they find what they need to find is in the library catalog. I got a quote for this next fiscal year from the company that we have been using. The quote that they gave for that one piece of software was $40,000. And so I tried negotiating, and that didn't really work. And so we decided to go with a different company, and we were able to cut that cost in half. So we're going with a different company that, in my opinion, is better and they're cheaper. And so that's why that line is dramatically different. So in the last fiscal year, we were approved for $52,000. This year, I'm asking for $42,000 because we were able to lower that cost. So that really helps us out a lot. And then going down a little bit more, the special projects, thorn specific use, that 10,000 corresponds with the 10,000 that we had coming in. And then also that line above it, special programs, special projects and programs, that line is different. But well, that's because of in the previous year, there was this 20,000 that we were transferring out. And this year it's just being distributed differently because the Thornton endowment has taken out the 20,000 in advance. So really we have more in that special projects and programs line and less in the special projects thorn specific use line, but it all kind of comes out okay.
So does that mean that special projects and programs, that's the portion that's taking out? What that 30,000, because it went from 5 to 30.
So it's the special projects thorn specific use.
Mhm.
Yes, that's why it's 20,000 less, because that's what was taken out.
Okay, and what about the line above it?
Okay, so I knew it would be difficult to explain this.
Sorry to
At
put
the
you on the
time.
spot. I'm just
No,
trying
that's
to figure it out.
okay. That's so really it's rough. Okay. Linda, do you think you could possibly help me with this?
It's not being taken out this year. It allows this one to be raised. I think
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
But is that money then going to remain in that account?
It is.
So that's not part of what you'll be spending, the 3,370.
No, so
So that's the plan. Instead of the 5,000,
Mm-hmm.
the plan is, since this doesn't have to be taken out, to add it to the programs because of the huge increase of programs and activities that are being planned.
So in the 2022 budget, it was on that bottom line item. What you're proposing in the 2023 budget is it's part of this other line item where the cursor is.
that's
It's
correct.
just in
Now,
a different line item.
we do need to keep in mind, if we're going back up to our library fund revenue, if you can scroll back up, Alan, that this is still 20,000 less than it was the previous year.
Right.
And that's where that 20,000 from that Thorn endowment money, I mean, that we're not getting.
Yes. So you're not getting it from the Thorn endowment and therefore you're not setting it aside.
That's correct.
Okay. But it's not just being shuffled to another account to rate, because that money should probably just go away, right? Not be put into a programming
Well-
budget, because that money's not there.
I do get what you're saying.
I'm not proposing anything. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand.
And it was in part because of less spending in that software line, and then more income from the dedicated property tax, that we actually had more to spend. And so that by putting it in that line, that was so that we could keep up our level of programs that we've been doing.
Okay, so that's not coming. That to me means it probably doesn't have anything to do with the $20,000 transfer that's not happening, and
Yeah.
that's not funding you're actually receiving.
Okay.
I don't know, and
I'm
I
sorry.
don't necessarily need you guys to put you on the spot
Well,
with this, but
Somewhere you're making up $25,000 for programs this year in the
It
new fiscal
look-
year. We're trying to figure out where that 25 is coming from.
Yeah.
It
I
looks
mean, I
like,
see when you go to the
Get a
top, there is enough
better
savings there. There's 10 and
Later.
it looks
I-
like the relation between lines 33, 44, and 45.
There's
If
your
I go down
25.
through here, that's where you're making that up, regardless of this 20,000. So it looks
Yeah.
like that's how that's made up in those
Sorry,
previous.
do you
lines.
mind saying
I
those
probably
line
shouldn't
numbers
have
again?
brought up
Yeah.
that 20,000 at all.
yeah, I don't think
It's-
that
The
one.
what?
is
Still
Yeah.
confused.
it doesn't
Do
quite.
do you mind
balance
saying the
still,
line
but
numbers that you just said one more time? I want to
Sorry.
make sure.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The line numbers, it just the Excel sheet line numbers, 33, the savings in
same
library
line.
software maintenance, the reduction in the lines, Thorn specified use right here,
there's your
going from 21,000 to 10,000 this year, and then the $30,000 increase. Between those lines, it looks like you're basically balancing out. That's where you're still at
Okay.
598, and they're not putting away the money for this.
Yeah.
So regardless
Okay.
of that, that's separate.
Okay.
But one thing to point out with this whole budget, just to point out one item, the budget will probably need to be revamped considerably, probably in about 6 months. So expect a major revision, but to help, I would look at this as a 6-month budget for this department. To say,
Okay.
how can they get from point A to point B? And then at that point, the council is gonna have to be heavily involved, along with the library board and the Friends of the Library, in modifying this budget according to the remodel of this building and the new civic center going in, community
Okay.
center, sorry.
Linda, did you need to add?
I think it's important to know that the 20,000, it was not 30,000 that we've received previously from the Thorn Endowment for Special Programs has always been spent for special programs. It was
Right.
never used to cover
The
that
20.
20,000.
Mhm.
So that 20,000
Oh.
came from the tax revenue and the other things that are going on. And therefore, it's not from the loss of that money.
Okay,
That 20,000, just since the city is not requiring, in the past, the city required that we give the 20,000. We reduced the budget to cover that 20,000 transfer.
mhm.
And this year, they've not required that. So
Because you're taking a hit otherwise
Yeah.
by the reduced Thorn endowment allocation. Okay.
Okay. that makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And just a side note, if we were just having a casual conversation, I'd probably be able to explain all of this to you very easily. But
Hopefully,
I
we're not
kind of
that scary,
freeze.
James.
Hang around for the police budget in a minute, James.
So are there any other questions about this? We're excited for the coming year. We're expecting to do a lot of fundraising and a lot of really fun activities in the library. And
Yeah,
so
and-
thank you, everyone.
And really, I'd like to go on record to say that you guys have been really great in participating with the fundraising and with getting the city center project off the ground. And I can send the designs as they are right now to you guys of the community center library remodel, just to give you guys a look at where we are with that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, James. All right, we'll move on to fiscal year 2023 budget proposal from the North Park Police Agency.
You guys have a digital copy of our budget as well. that Alan supplied?
No, I did.
Okay. Into your box, I believe. All right. Well, I'll start off by saying this year has been one that I think everybody understands. There isn't a department that doesn't have a need, right, in the entire city. And I'm here to talk about our needs, but I'm also here to tell you that I support everybody's needs and we'll do our part as well to help that happen, not only here in North Logan, but in Hyde Park as well. So don't take this as a give me all. It's going to be a lot. So Alan, go ahead. So I just want to show you guys some census data from 2010 to 2020, how the population has increased in North Logan and Hyde Park. And when North Logan and Hyde Park's population increases, our service population increases as well as the police department. So this is what I'm talking about when we talk needs. The cities have stepped up over this since 2021, we've increased our staff by 3. It doesn't mean that we're where we should be or need to be, but we've had a huge jump and we appreciate that. But as I project, I was asked to give a projection. Where do we see the needs down the road in 5 years? Well, in order to give a number, I took the census and basically went out to 2025. And our staffing needs by then would be upwards of 19 officers. We're currently running at 13. So as we go through this, Alan, thank you. Just as an overview for last year of 2021, a total of 46,830 law calls were given out amongst these agencies here on the screen. Out of those, North Park Police Department responded to 6,200 calls last year. And then when you break that down by officers, North Park officers took 620 calls on average per officer. When you look at those call volumes, that's a lot. There's a lot of responsibility that goes in with it. We want to offer the best service that we possibly can, make sure that we're doing an adequate job for everybody that comes forward and needs the help of law enforcement. So when you look at those numbers, it's a lot for an individual officer to handle. And in the next screen, you'll see that.
Before you go from that one,
sorry.
jump backwards. Is there something that Smithfield did to decrease call volume by that much?
No.
Okay.
What happened was COVID. And so our
Okay.
call volume decreased as well, or excuse me, increased, but there's certain types of calls that decreased for us. So it was COVID. You're going to see a pattern with some of the numbers because of that. All right, so this slide just shows you the comparison between North Logan and Hyde Park. So North Logan, we responded to 4,731 calls just in North Logan in 2021. That was 104 up from the year before. Next slide. So what we've seen as we've increased in numbers is also an increase in the violence that's involved in those cases. Priority 1 through 4 is what I have on that left column. In your guys' box, inside that gives you in the booklet I gave you, gives an explanation of what is a priority 1 through 4. I'm not going to go into any of those details, but if you ever have any questions, feel free to ask me, reach out, or even at the end, if you have something when I'm done with my presentation, I'd be glad to answer that.
But you'd be just in
Yes.
general, that priority 1 through 4, 1 is the most severe.
Correct.
So it's the Harrier phone calls.
All these are actually your Harrier phone calls. It just is a matter of,
How bad?
I won't go into detail, but a child abuse is a priority 2. So it just kind of gives you an idea. Again, the explanation or definition of what a priority 1, 2, 3, 4 is. This requires our officers to respond. Like this is somebody needs something now, not later. And so you look at the increase that we've had, 48% of our call volume is the priority 1 through 4 out of all of our calls that we take, which is 2,976 of those. Everybody saw an increase though in the Valley, and I think statewide, probably nationwide, I would assume that they're seeing more violence within the crimes that are being committed. And so next. So here's a number. It's a big number, right? But it's the number. So we did the mid-year adjustment when the emergency services fee was approved by the city council and those wage adjustments and things went in. That's that mid-year baseline that you see, which was the 1.567 for North Logan's portion of our budget. Right now, we're asking for, this is an apples to apples increase in this number here would be the 1.674, and which would be an increase of 106. There is the emergency services fee that I'm not exactly sure how much the city is collecting of that, but that's not accounted for in here. Basically, you're seeing the numbers as they are. So,
Meaning that any amount that is offset by that emergency services fee isn't shown there.
it's not represented
Okay.
here. Yeah. So this is what the increase is just because of our ask. And these are all just inflation increases. There is a 3% built in. I believe that was across the board. All departments were looking at that. And so we included it in ours as well. Not to be greedy, but if we get behind again, it's going to be another big ask at some point in the future. So I included that in the budget as well.
3% increase in what specifically?
Wage
Just,
increase,
okay,
a
sorry, I
raise.
didn't hear
Sorry.
wage.
Yeah.
Wanted to make
No,
sure I was
apologize.
understanding.
I should have been clearer on that. The next slide. So when I come before you tonight and I talked about where we should be currently, that would increase our staff by 4 more officers. So I broke down what the cost would be. This is the top numbers in addition to the apples to apples that I presented on that last slide. But the number below that would include that. So it's a total cost. So obviously, when I asked for 4 officers, it would look like $494,000 to increase to North Logan alone. But that's where it's my job to come and tell you where should we be. I'm standing here telling you, based on all the data and the facts that I've provided you, that I'm not going to go into specific tonight during my presentation. That's where the justification and the reasons come behind it, but also because of what I see every single day at our office and what those needs are and where we can do better. And so as you go down through here, there's some different options. Okay, are any of these a talking point is what I'm basically asking with this slide. Can you get anywhere within our request to see that we could start having a conversation about increasing our staffing levels? I spoke with the mayors and we have 2 part-time positions currently that I can't fill. Just can't find officers to come and work part-time. The goal behind that initially was, is you hire 2 part-time officers, you save all the benefits, but yet if you have 2, you're basically getting a full-time person if you work each of them 20 hours a week. That hasn't been successful for us in the police department. Part-time has not been where we can really step up and get the support and, you know, extra officers and manpower. So in that conversation, I asked the question, what if we transfer that $40,000 that's in our budget to fund those 2 positions and put that towards a full-time position? And so that's what that number at the bottom represents. So it would ask or increase our ask to $166,000 this year, but that's the apples to apples included, as well as the additional cost to hire a full-time versus a 2 part-time. Next slide. I'm not going to read all these. You guys can see them, but the return on your investment, number 1, safer community. Number 2, which I think can also fight for number 1, is our officer safety. And I can tell you that there are many nights I'm receiving phone calls about incidents that are occurring in our cities where that's a major concern of mine. So,
I think that was something I was disappointed to learn, that we do deal with some tough things that you wish that a city our size doesn't, but it's just the sad facts. So
it is. And, you know, we're here to do our job. We love our job, but we also want to do it safely. And we want to provide that security and safety for our citizens as well. Again, the rest of that is on there. With that comes morale. We've done a great job, I think, within the police department. As the crew that we have, the team that we have, we've really turned some corners in the way the police department has run. So, and that's thanks to everybody involved, including the city councils, the different departments within the city. I just think that the relationships have done wonders for increasing that morale in the PD. So, any questions? That's my presentation for you. But do you have any questions?
Do you have that next page?
Excuse me,
Do you have the next page up there?
I did not include, I have it in my slide, but we did not include it in the
In the
presentation. Are
slide.
you talking about
We
the
have
line
it, we
item?
have it in our
Yeah.
packet though.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see the type of calls that have decreased, but even more significant to me is the psychiatric calls and the overdose calls that have significant increases. One's over 170%, one's over 88%. So, just to point out, I think your type of calls are also changing.
Yeah, it's very true. And with that comes the more danger to our officers as they're responding by themselves. So thank you for that, Craig. Sorry, I was trying to keep my actual slides short. So,
I thumbed ahead and looked at the comparison for different agencies and what their pay structure is. And so looking at what we're paying is far below just Brigham City. So I can see where it might be hard to attract the right type of candidates. For myself, I'm looking at, we've discussed this before, but I feel like if I'm going out and eating one meal out with my family, that would bring us in if everybody in the city forgot, I just went without that one meal and paid for another police officer. I feel like you're worth it.
well, thank you.
Yeah. I'd go without 5 meals,
6 bottles of
one
water.
a month, 6 bottles of water, yeah. No.
Joni, you're in charge of putting a bucket out for
Yeah.
people who are foregoing a
In
meal.
every restaurant.
Thank you.
Go once a month, yeah.
Is our 2265 current start rate? That's right.
That is
right?
correct. That is our current start rate that was approved during that wage adjustment. And after successful completion of field training, they get a quarter raise, which brings them to what Smithfield is starting at the 2290.
Gotcha.
I am curious how quickly, let's just say there's a reality where we could give you 4 officers. How quickly do you believe you could have those positions filled?
It'd be months. There's really no real good answer for you because the state of Utah is down over 600 officers right now. And when the new prison goes in, we're going to be well over 800 officers short. And people are having just as many problems filling those positions as we are. It has become that wage war down along the Wasatch Front, if you will. And that's how they're filling their positions, is they're increasing their wage or offering whatever incentives to come. And I'm not here asking for that. I'm just explaining that is what's going on along the Wasatch Front. So we've got 9 currently in the police academy, I believe was the last numbers I heard. And normally we run at 30 that are in the academy. They won't graduate until November 15th, roughly. And there's only 9 candidates. So I don't know.
That's statewide?
Local. That's local.
That's local,
Sorry,
okay.
excuse me, our academy here at Bridgerland. So I couldn't answer how quickly. I would hope that if we got 4, we wouldn't be able to train 4 at once anyway. We would stagger this. We would have to stagger it because I don't have the staff to train that many people all at once. And so there would be a difference in the dollar amounts, whether we hire 2 or whether we hire 4 or 1.5, whatever that is. We have to look at that. And that 1.5, by the way, just so I can clarify, I know I'm over my 5 minutes, Alan and Roger. The 1.5 would be 1 in July. The half would be waiting until January to actually open that up. So that's where that difference is.
How long does it take for you to figure that you're getting a new cadet trained so that they're fully functioning?
With 0 experience, a minimum of 3 months.
Uh-huh.
With the 2 recent hires that we have right now, they're on what's called a ghost week, where the supervisors are ghosting them. They go to a call, the supervisor goes to a call in a different vehicle, and just to make sure that it's being handled the way it's supposed to. And so they're both our most current or recent hires were experienced officers, and they're in that ghost week, and they've been with us about a month or so.
Okay. Thanks, UB, and thanks
Yeah.
for all that you
Sorry,
guys
I
do.
went over.
You did great. It'll be reflected in the results of this budget allocation.
Yep.
All right, we'll move on to budget proposal from the facilities department.
Hello, I'm Dathan Robinson. I'm the new facilities guy, and so hopefully I don't mess this up too much.
So starting off, our revenue, our total revenue for the facilities is $265,674 dollars for the year. Our budget's pretty much going to be the same as last year, not too much changes. But that revenue comes in just from, all the other departments in the city. They all chip into it. Going down, well, really the main things I want to hit on here would be our safety. First is that in our expenses, our safety expenses have gone down. That's just because as we are getting all of our buildings up to OSHA compliance, we project that this upcoming year we're going to be able to save a little bit of money keeping them OSHA compliant instead of building them. So that's a positive thing, isn't it? If we could go down a little bit more. One thing that we're going to also try to be doing is that green box right there. That's just, who we pay to clean the buildings and services like that. We're going to be looking at ways that we could maybe cut back and save a little bit more on there, just with adjusting services that we have, taking care of some in-house or finding different companies or whatnot. The general insurance, the red line, it went up a little bit, but that's out of our control, and that's general insurance for the whole city. And then just our total expenses, $255,510. We're down $1,500, a little bit over $1,500 for this upcoming year.
You did great. Good
Oh,
job.
thank you.
Any questions?
Way to go.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to budget proposal from the general government departments. Sounds important and also fake.
It does sound, I was gonna say it sounds 100% fake.
Should we just skip over this one? This is actually a huge portion of the budget. This is basically everything. As far as general fund revenue, and looking at this, I'm not going to go into this at length. Sorry, I will jump through this very quick because there are a lot of lines in general revenue and general expense. But what you're looking at, we have property tax. If we go through here, we have sales tax and energy sales and use tax. So those are three of the major things coming in that are our major sources. This dedicated library property tax is actually a negative. It goes out from here, and it was the revenue that you saw inside of the library budget. But you see, just on average, about a $100,000 to $200,000 increase each year, just between our property tax and our sales tax. Now, I need to clarify that our property tax, the increase you're seeing is not the city increasing property taxes. That's out of growth. So that comes in from new people or new businesses moving into our community. And that's where that natural increase comes from. City does not raise property taxes unless we go out and raise them formally. And that's a lengthy process. That takes 4 meetings, 2 public hearings. However, that's probably going to be needed this year. And so we'll talk about that. That's why I don't want to go over this in length, because we will go over that in length at meetings in May, June, and August of this year. So everyone's aware of that. And we'll discuss different options and what those would look like based off of property taxes. But you can see here, it's 1.4 that we bring in through property taxes. Sales tax, it's about 2.6 to 2.8. It can even hit 3 in some years. So we try to be very conservative in our estimates on revenue because there's nothing worse than overestimating your revenue for the year. But just jumping down through here, obviously licenses and permitting, disproportionate business license fee is in there. That will slightly be modified, and this year we'll probably discuss other alterations to the disproportionate business license fee based off of policing services and adding that to the good landlord licensing program. So that would be something this year that we'll discuss later on in the year. Just jumping through, I'm just jumping down through as far as revenue. These are false senses of revenue, but it's solid waste fee. This is what we charge for garbage, and we'll get to that with expenses in this next. I'll jump over to expenses in a second. But jumping down through here, there's nothing really major as far as changes. Looking through revenue, and we try to shoot to be conservative. Jumping over to expense, that's basically, this is the general fund expense items. Jumping out through here, this is city council, this is generally a little too high, in my opinion, but then jumping down through these other line items, these are just general items each year. We've talked about it in the past because the city council never vote themselves in a raise. No previous city council would. But at some point, I would recommend looking at something that would be like an automated inflationary increase for the city council based off of these. Now, some of that is built in, but it would be the same for the planning commission as well. That'd just be my recommendation, looking through that. But jumping down through here, this is a weird department executive. That'd be myself and Marie. Administrative expenses, that's basically a lot of the other office staff and what they do. One thing I did want to touch on is you'll see an administrative allocation. What that is you look at the administrative department and you have someone like Debbie, our treasurer, and her department and everyone that works with her, and they handle the utility billing for the city. And so probably like 80% of their job is handling the billing for water, sewer, stormwater, and some of the enterprise accounts. So what you do is you take some of those monies in those other departments, those enterprise accounts, and it's off of a transfer that comes into this department to help offset their costs. So that would be, you see it's a negative, that's what the parentheses are. That's actually revenue to offset their expenses. And so that's something that we'll be talking about. I'll get to that in a minute about ways in which we need to look at probably increasing that. We increased it mid-year this last year, but increasing the percentage allocation that comes over. We're never going to hit that target of 80%, but a little bit higher is probably a little bit more appropriate. Coming down through here, non-departmental is really just a lot of things that cover like professional and technical firewall support for our city. Just general contracts for services, banking services, other things that we have throughout the city. Coming down through here, we have the court expenditures. And the court is just highly governed by state regulation. We don't really have a lot of involvement as to how monies come in and come out of the court. It just basically, I don't mean to say this, but it is what it is when you go through here. And our court is generally we spend about $80,000 to $100,000 net. That's what we spend as a city on our court. Coming down through, we've already gone through this with police. Sanitation, what I pointed out before, the garbage was the expense, the revenue that you saw that. This is our expense. The problem was I think 5 years ago, we were $50,000 in the hole. Meaning we lost 50,000 a year on garbage. We were not supposed to do that. And so hats off to Debbie and Mary and Jordan.
And that's
all
just
the other
when we
departments.
weren't billing citizens that were getting
Correct.
garbage services.
We had an inventory of cans out there. To go back to one of the previous questions, they asked a very good question, like why do we not have multiple accounts on like PUDs and townhome complexes? Well, they had probably 50 garbage cans in every townhome complex, and we couldn't keep track of all of them and keep those up to date. And so this was another reason why we had to go to more, well, a lot of what other cities do, where they have one account, they have one dumpster for a PUD complex like that. And so looking through here, hats off to Debbie because they brought that back up. So we're not losing money on that, which in the future we'll have another option for garbage, but we won't go into that tonight. But going through,
I don't want to talk about garbage anymore. I just
You're our
don't.
trash czar.
Yes, please.
But jumping down through here, I'm just going to jump to the general fund balance. As you look at this, sorry, it's so far down here. As you go through all of our different general fund accounts, so fire, community development, you can see all of these in this left column. You can see total revenue, total expense. Now, these departments over here are not enterprise accounts, but we set them up that way because most departments, for the first 10 years I worked here, we had no idea what revenue we brought in. And so we needed to show that these departments are bringing in revenue and that they have an expense and what's their demand on the general fund. And so essentially, as you go through this, it makes it very simple, and Scott's helped set this up. And so it gives a lot more ownership to the department heads that you've seen tonight. The department heads, they own their budgets. It's theirs. They need to go through it. They need to stay within budget. They need to concentrate on things that bring in revenue and keep their expenses down. As you look at this, on the initial budget that comes in, it hasn't been whittled down much. I think it was at 780 when we first saw it last week. It was down to 666,000 over budget. What that means essentially is from this point until the first meeting in May, we start whittling down. We cut back in each of the departments and say, we see your request, but we're going to look at seeing how we can reduce that down. Now, generally, we try to shoot for around 200 to 300,000. This may sound dumb, but over budget. What ends up happening by the end of the year is our capital and depreciation and the departments that stay within budget end up balancing. We always stay within budget, but we have to shoot for that amount. We used to try to shoot for 0 or just balancing, which was a extremely good goal. But we've learned through practice and through 6 years of audits now that we end up balancing around there if we shoot for that 200 to 300,000 over. So just keep that in mind. That's the target goal that we're looking at. As you look over here, I put a long list of things that we're going to need to do in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then the next 2 to 3 months. And these things will probably help us reduce and get our achieve some of those budgetary goals that we've talked about as council goals, and also meeting our budgetary demand. At this point, police chief brought it up. I mean, all the departments have a demand, and they're legitimate. Every single department that you've heard. And so we need to look through and really assess what we can fund and make sure that those departments are getting some of the things they need. And also you've seen the issues with wages. I mean, we've all seen that up to this point when several things in the private sector, and I don't want to go over this at length, but when you're seeing things in the private sector just skyrocket, especially for part-time labor, which has become a massive portion of several departments and their needs, going from, I'm starting to sound old now, back in my day, all of our part-time crews started at $8 per hour, and that was 10 years ago. And 5 years ago, they were up to $10, $11, and then even 2 or 3 years ago. And now you're looking at, I mean, countless private sector businesses starting at $20 per hour. And so as we're looking at that and hiring our entry level and part-time on up to our department heads, we need to be looking at those wages and how we can be a little bit more competitive, because it costs so much to go out and hire and as the police chief pointed out tonight, going out and competing for such a few number of people that are looking for jobs right now. I think unemployment's like at 2.8, which is not really a statistic. Once it goes below 3, it's not even real anymore.
Mhm.
That means not a lot of people are looking for jobs, and all you're doing is poaching from other businesses, other industries at that point. So sorry, I went over those general fund numbers, but I can jump back if there's questions on any particular item there.
That's overwhelming.
I'm
Did
sorry.
you cover ARPA at all with that, or are we still?
No, we have another one.
I will
Okay.
get to ARPA shortly.
Okay. Any questions on this? That's what I would call it if I were fake naming something. General government departments.
Yeah, you did mention one thing that I think I would just like to be on the record of saying, at no point I feel like I can ask for a raise for myself, even inflationary increase. I mean, I am in it for the money, but I'm just kidding. But
I think it's important to think about it. I think that's a really hard thing to consider while we're on the council. It certainly is not going to be a first year thing, I don't think.
yeah, that is definitely something to consider, but I do think it would be, I think it's a smart idea to think of getting this closer to something somebody could do as a job, unless it's something somebody does as a secondary thing.
I haven't had a raise in 10 years.
Roger.
I just
Based
noticed.
off the hours though that the average council member works, you probably make like pennies or $1 per hour. I'm sorry, you're volunteering at that point.
I think most of us were surprised, like on the planning commission, I was surprised to learn that it was paid
A
at
paid
all.
position.
And I think that's generally probably true. So,
But I'll look at that. You can't recommend it, but I can. And I'll look in there and just see if there's a mechanism where it might just naturally increase each year.
The $4 tax withholding is killing me.
All right.
Nope.
Any other questions on this?
Do we get a copy of this?
It's
I'm gonna
Yes,
get to
you
the
have
12%.
access to
Digital,
this.
okay.
It's in the folders and then you can get access at any point, and I can show you where it's at on the Google Drive. So you can get that.
All right. Alan, do you mind moving to the ARPA fund budget proposal?
Yeah, let me go through this really quick because this is can be kind of confusing, but because this is kind of convertible from CARES. CARES was the original budget. Now it's ARPA. But just to keep it simple, we will receive 664,953 for the last 2 years. Sorry, for 2-year period. This fiscal year we're in now and the next fiscal year. And so for a total of 1.2 million and some odd change. So we have to spend that in the 2-year period. It's different from CARES. CARES was a very strict and very straightforward. This is a little bit more difficult to know how to spend the money because we didn't receive as much guidance, but we need to stay within the guidelines of ARPA. And so jumping back, I'm going to go into this folder here. Into the ARPA potential projects. Wait, jumping down through here, CARES had like a ton of different categories that they gave us, and North Logan kind of led the way in the state. I hate to say that, but we did. We went out and we had opportunities for business grants, everything else across the board. Every other city in the state was coming to us saying, how did you do these things, and working with us. With ARPA, we don't have that direction as to what we can and can't do, other than it literally just says you can use it on infrastructure. We know that right off the bat. Knowing that we have massive sewer trunk line costs coming up and limited funds in which to do that, even with a bond in place, if we can secure that in June with the latest changes, we'll have to use a portion of that for a sewer trunk line. Water facilities, we talked about the absolute necessity. We know for certain these things ARPA monies can be spent on. There are no questions asked. That's what it's for. And so looking at those two things are literally, it's low hanging fruit. And the community center is another thing that we need to look into. And the portion of that we would dedicate to that is the remote learning. So everything you see here, we're recording our meeting. We're one of the few cities in the valley that do this, that we broadcast everything on YouTube, and that we're open with everything that we have. But remote learning opportunities, and also emergency operations center. That's where we would host an emergency event. Right now it's hosted at the fire station, where we go over, they have a backup generator. So we're able to function and operate as an emergency operations center in an emergency. We had an exercise last year for an EOC where FEMA came out. They helped us with that. North Logan ranked the highest in the county on our emergency operations during that practice exercise. And so it would be moving that over to the new city office. And so a portion of those funds could help with that. These other items down below are options. As we look to that, we could do utility grants. We can look at some of the local businesses and entities and charities that have asked about those funds. But really, we do need to spend some of the money this year. So it either needs to be spent or put into a capital fund that it can be expended out of in this next year and a half. So just so you're aware of that. And again, we have $1.2 million of the money that's come from the federal government.
All right. Questions on that? All right, Alan, you mentioned that we don't actually need to reconvene as a redevelopment agency for the next item.
Normally you do. And so in the May meeting, when we
Mhm.
adopt a tentative budget, you'll have to convene. This was more just a discussion because you're not making any decisions tonight.
Okay.
As a redevelopment agency. But just to give you a very quick overview of this budget. So this is tax increment funding. This is, I think we've gone over this in the past, and I can get with each of you because it takes a long time to go over what tax increment financing is. And the state's new legislation that's come down the pike, and I'll go over that in a few minutes, really disrupts this, really disrupts what the city can offer for retail. In fact, it almost shuts it down. I don't know how the bill got passed. I'm just going to be blunt here in this meeting. It really hurts smaller cities like North Logan beyond belief. But while we still have the existing RDA in place, which is now known as a community reinvestment area, we'll talk about that in a minute as well. But these funds would go towards certain projects, and they're very limited in what we can and can't do with RDA funds. They're very limited. It says specific things that you can use them on, but just so you know, things that we've done with them in the past. We've helped install 200 East Wolfpack Way. That was our match. A lot of that was paid through federal grants and through the CMPO, but also through our RDA funds helped with that in our match. It helped with the light that we had to put in on 2500 North and 200 East. Those lights are 200,000, so we had to use those monies because that's what the intent was, and that's what it's supposed to be used for. Then it also incentivizes business and growth in the community in specified areas. We're tracked very heavily on this by the county and the state accordingly. But these are kind of areas right now in the city center area. We get a little bit from what's called the EDA, which is these are former acronyms, which is kind of the innovation campus, only a small portion of that. And then the URA, which these things don't exist anymore, but we have to carry them forward until they expire, which is probably the next 5 years. Urban renewal area, and that's a portion of the RDA that goes towards cleaning up blight within the community. And so, sorry, I just went through this very quick, and we can go over it in detail at the next meeting. The reason I'm going through it so quick is, one, there's no decisions that will be made tonight, but also just keep in mind, we're working with the school district and the county right now to push a new community reinvestment area, new acronym for an RDA. And it's much larger, encompasses a large portion of the community, and we're gonna have to learn what we can and can't do with those monies based off of the latest legislation. But it really does help businesses come into the community, and it gives a much higher return to school districts, to the county, and it helps economic growth beyond belief. So.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions on I guess RDAs? All right, let's move on to discussing a draft economic development master plan.
Let me jump over to this. All right, we worked on this very heavily last year. I'm putting this together, and sorry, the way that they came across, the pictures are horribly grainy. They're not like this in the actual presentation. It's very large, and we'll update these obviously with a much nicer picture on each of these. There's no shortage of the nice pictures we can use in North Logan City, but it goes through the vision, values, background. But as you go through this, the different departments spent several hours, from community development, Spencer, interns working on this, our economic development staff, that have put a considerable amount of time together working on this. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but it really does give us a direction as far as economic development in North Logan, from goals and strategies to focusing on different areas. Just as a side note, and to complement the departments that worked on this from economic development and Spencer, our community reinvestment area contractor that's helping us with that, he said this is one of the best economic development plans he has seen because of the different areas that it's broken out into. Most cities just say, hey, here's a big area and we want a lot of money. But this area really sections it out into logical areas. They're not all within the same zone in those areas, so it circles like areas. So like North Main Street, South Main Street, they have different feels, different aspects. North Main Street's still wide open in some aspect. And then you have our industrial manufacturing area, which has several very high quality businesses in there, and then our city center. And so just going through this, I wanted to update you, let you know that they've done a fantastic job. It's getting closer. We'll update those photos. We'll fine tune a lot of the different things in here, but probably look for that in the next 2-3 weeks of being approved. But if you do have comments in the next 2 to 3 weeks, please get with me. Let me know, because we will have to modify certain areas. And as far as retail incentives, again, the state really just handcuffs all cities, but especially hurts smaller cities as far as incentives go and what we can do for businesses.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions, or we will move on to draft economic development incentive table.
I'll just fly through this one because we're going to have to change this.
Because of the new regulations. I'm sorry.
Yes. So as you look through this, this was our former one that we were updating, and hats off to Dylan. He's put this together. He's worked hard on this. But what we wanted to do is, instead of coming before the city council every time a business comes in and saying, what can we do with a certain type of business? What incentives can we offer? We wanted to create a table, and as the businesses come in, they actually fit into certain classes of businesses where they would be eligible for certain types or ranges of incentives. And so it gives this staff, the economic development staff, a little bit more leeway when they sit down and when time is of the essence, their ability to approve certain things. Now, I need to specify, major contracts that would occur where we'd be waiving years of sales tax in the past would still come before the city council. I mean, those would be massive things that would need approval. But this would just be to get the negotiations off and running with several different businesses and smaller businesses. It would be fine. But as I mentioned beforehand, sales tax, just flat out incentives, may be a thing of the past, unless we meet certain caveats, which really kills North Logan and our ability to ever have an edge over another larger community in that regard.
To the south.
Yes, or any larger community. What that bill did is essentially just locks economic growth into large cities.
It's the one advantage that we had in getting people to come to our city,
No,
and
makes
now
sense.
it's swept off the table. Would have been nice if they had done something that, made it more contingent on what size of city you were.
Yep.
Because I think they could have leveled the playing field.
Yes.
Okay.
There are caveats that we'll go over that we'll look into. Mixed use housing is still eligible. Mixed use commercial and residential. We meet certain caveats where we still can't offer sales tax. So I guess if you're looking at the glass half full, there are some things that are good. Redevelopment where you tear down something, we can still incentivize there. And for some reason, parking lot structures. So if we want to put parking lot structures in, we can do that still with incentives.
Okay.
Yes, very unique.
Glass
and
half full.
Glass half full.
Glass has a couple of drops in there.
All right.
So we'll be looking at maximizing those few areas that we do have. And also infrastructure is still on the table. So but putting in infrastructure, like if a road needs to come by or that's how the original Walmart, the incentive that they put on the table. Back in the day, they didn't offer major sales tax incentive. They just said, we'll put a road on the north side of the business. So that's what North Logan did to bring in the North Walmart. But that would be the only thing that we could offer now going forward. So keep that in mind. Sorry, because that has to be changed, we'll kind of just leave that for a future discussion, if that's okay.
All right, thanks, Alan. Let's move on to updates on the Civic Center. Is that where we are?
Yeah, Mayor, if you want to just give a few quick updates just on funding in one aspect, and then I can give an update on the RF.
I'm trying to even think what updates I have to give. You maybe have to take over on this one.
So the mayor and I went down to a meeting with the Community Impact Board. It's
Oh, yeah, I can give that one. Yeah, Al and I went to the CIB meeting, asking for 5 million. The good news is that we received 5 million, and because of some changes to a $5 million loan, let me be clear. Because of some of the changes in the board that are upcoming, instead of that being something that it was a soft agreement, they actually funded it that day. So we will have access to that money quicker than we otherwise would. Bad news is we were anticipating or asking for 1.5%, and without any real discussion, they gave us 2.5%. So that's higher than we were hoping for. It will increase the payment, I think approximately $50,000 a year. So that's not ideal, but kind of difficult to, get too mad during that meeting. We were unfortunately following some a little bit more maybe dire needs, like a snowplow that had no floor in it. We were coming in to ask for a new library and civic center after that. So anyway, we were happy to get that immediately funded and to get the full amount. That really probably would have been a deal killer if we hadn't been able to secure that funding. So we're fortunate to get that.
And to put it in perspective, just so people know, we have to exhaust a lot of other methods before we go and apply. That's part of the application method. In the private sector right now, you're looking at more, rates today jumped to 5% in the residential sector. But the rates in talking about the commercial sector were 4 to 5% on a 20-year loan. They don't go up to 30. And so if we were to go on the open market, instead of a rate at 2.5%, which we want that to be lower on a $5 million loan, that would have changed by double. Our payment every year would have doubled at those rates and at that duration of the loan. And so there is some positive in that.
Yeah.
In this.
I will send those just preliminary plans for the library so you can look them over. If you do have any feedback, do let me know. But we're getting really close on the library remodel and the community center. And I think that we've made some really good progress on that. Anything else, Alan?
The only other things with the RFP, so that we'll probably go out for an RFP with a different approach for the city offices. Before we had a CMGC method that we went out for a couple months ago. The city council was involved in that when we talked through that. The only issue is at that point, it was our initial bids came back. They went from 4.2 million to 5 million to 8 million for the cost of the city office. And so now we're going to go out and we're going to look at a more of a standard method of just asking for a guaranteed max price. It's a different method of going out for an RFP, which basically says, this is the amount of money we have. This is the design that we want. Who can meet that? And so we're going to go out and do another request here shortly and see if we can get that. So just if you have questions, just let me know on that process. But that would go out probably this week or early next week, and it would last 2 weeks at that point.
All right. All right, reports from city officers, boards, and committees. Nothing from UB, nothing from the chief, nothing. Okay. Jordan, we've heard enough out of you. Alan?
Just any upcoming events. We went over this very briefly, but sorry, this is a little bit outdated. Easter egg hunt was fantastic. 1,000 people came for 1 minute and then they left.
What was going on after that day?
That was odd.
All the way down 2,500. That was crazy.
Yeah, it was a private event. Keller Williams came in and did a kind of a party that just kept expanding.
Holy
over
moly.
time,
Yeah,
and they
that thing
did an
was-
egg drop from helicopters.
I saw the helicopter. Yeah. Should have snuck into that party.
Does the city charge a fee for private? Okay, all right. good.
They had a ton of people there.
Oh,
but
man, it
but
was
the
huge.
helicopter was really cool. My
Yeah.
boys loved it.
Yeah, coming up in the next couple of weeks, obviously we have the color run this Saturday at 10 a.m. It's at Elkridge Park.
Too late to register for that, by the way.
No.
No.
Is it not? 'Cause
No.
there was a date on that flyer.
They
Okay.
normally have like pre-registration where you get a discount on like t-shirts or something else. but-
You can't get a t-shirt right now, but you can get the color packets.
I don't look
Yeah.
good in t-shirts anyway, but I just want to know if we can still register.
Yeah,
Day of
you can.
registrations are fantastic. That's probably an easy way to go up and do that. And then the Miss
You know.
NLC pageant.
Run some chocolate.
I'm trying to look through these things. 100-miler kickoff is on the 23rd at 10 a.m. And then we'll talk about a groundbreaking ceremony. That'll come up the next few months. But those are the only things I just wanted to go over a few of the events coming up. Keep you in the loop on that. Unfilled jobs, I spoke about that earlier, but fantastic. With work of the interns and Karen and everyone, all the department heads working together on that. Ideas, even from the police department on how to fill those jobs, and thanks to everyone involved, they're getting closer to being staffed, which is fantastic news. It was a significant worry for us over the summer or over the winter months.
If I can just add, we're really trying to push the well-being survey that Utah State is doing for our city. The more responses we get, the more effective that's going to be. So if you wouldn't mind, Roger, especially if you just share that on your social media where everyone communicates with you.
Absolutely.
Is Insta-
Sorry, I've not been very good.
Insta, I don't do.
Snapchat's fine, whatever works.
MySpace.
But yeah, if you guys would promote that in
Share
whatever
TikTok.
way you see fit, handing out paper flyers is accepted too. And then Marie's not here, so I will call myself to task. I will be doing the mayor's message for May, and I will be focusing on water. So Jordan will work together on that, but I'm hoping that just in general, that's kind of the theme of May is a lead up. I want to make sure, and Emily, thanks for your work on this, that we're talking frequently about this so that no one gets blindsided by really dire water situations this summer. And I think there is a misunderstanding that it's snowing right now. How could we still be in a drought?
Oh,
that was an actual
actually a
comment from Emily's.
4 separate times.
Oh, really?
But it's snowing, so we're probably okay. And I was like, okay, I wasn't going to address it, but
So the hill will be steep that we have to climb in on that front.
no,
But
it was more than I expected.
but I think that's going to be our focus as far as the city website or the city social media as well. Yeah, I think that's it from me as far as updates. I guess just to let you know, we're still working on the garbage stuff, and that's a process.
Why does the email you just sent show a big basketball hoop at the community center? Big basketball court.
It's just to give you an
Is that
idea
for
of
scale?
size.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not an actual.
I was all for it. Thought that'd be kind of cool. But
It's an option.
What are our plans for the current location where the city offices are?
But we would sell those. We would sell the
Okay.
building.
And
Good
that's-
question, though. Fantastic.
Yeah, I need to
beautiful
check my
building.
folder, apparently.
All right. Any other updates from the council? All right, then I would propose that we take a 2-minute break before executive session.
second. Wait.
Okay.
All in favor?
Do we need to go out of city council to do that?
The
hit the
recess and
restroom?
then
No,
do
you're
the-
fine. You just have to vote to go into executive
Okay.
session.
We'll do that on our way back.
So we don't need to ask for a restroom. We don't need to propose a
Let it be noted,
restroom.
Buzzy both held up the meeting at the beginning.
Make sure the recording.
Yeah, that's what it's for. Record.
I adjourn for the urinal.